Hello, everybody. Welcome to Spiritual Awakening 101. And the nature of the series that we promote, these videos, all are about new thought. New thought is metaphysical. Metaphysical ideas that translate into demonstrations in the physical world. So, as a man thinketh, so is it done unto him. This is the way Jesus taught. And we try and teach similarly that our thoughts and our mind are the builder. And what we're building would be consistent with God's will, not our own will. That's important because we can misuse the mind and build consistent with our own needs that we subjectively determine to be our needs. But this isn't the highest nature and the highest consciousness. What we're doing is first seeking God's will and requesting God's power to carry that out through us. So the mind is used, of course, at all times, but then it's demonstrated and manifested consistent with God's intention. And God's intention is always for a healing, for an extension of God's will, and for a reconciliation between people who may or may not have found themselves at odds with each other. There'd been a challenge. There'd been misunderstanding. There'd been judgment and criticism. That's all replaced by miracles. Well, I want to read again this week from Science of Mind magazine. This is the April 2020 edition. And this is an article entitled, Right Now is a New Beginning. And it's written by Reverend Jane Beach. I like this particular article, and I'll read and comment as we go along. She says, right now, in this moment, I can choose a new beginning, intentionally creating the life I want to live. My logical and opinionated mind has formed filters through which I see the world. Filters of judgment and guilt have had a subtle but quite real negative effect on my life. Because I've become what I repeatedly do, my actions speak volumes. If I repeatedly complain, I've become a complainer. If I constantly notice what's wrong, I'm a fault finder. If I continually give others space to speak their opinion, I'm open minded. If over and over again I look for what's right, I'm an optimist. Well, just those first two paragraphs are talking all about choice. And New Thought is very, very big on our choices, and our choices being unlimited, infinite possibilities, rather than being negative, focusing on the scarcity and lack of choices. There are always choices, and choices that provide me with a solution to the problems that seem intractable. God is working through me, always providing the solutions that are filled with love, the solutions that are filled with relationship, love, and joining. This is typically the way the solutions work. They're filled with love. The problem stems from, first of all, an unfit relationship with our higher power, which we call God. So the fitness or unfitness nature of our relationship with God has to be addressed first. And we go into prayer and meditation, and we acknowledge that God is love. God is wholeness and completeness. God is health. God is prosperity. And I am an expression of God in Christ, as Buddha, as the Tao, as the Yahweh, the great I am. And as that expression of God, I have all the qualities and the nature in the likeness and image of God. So if God is wholeness, so am I. If God is greatness, so am I. If God is love, so am I. If God is prosperity, so am I. If God is oneness with my neighbor, so am I. All of that is true. And when I adopt that in deep communion with my higher power, which I call God, then what I'm accomplishing is the truth. I'm more allowing the truth than accomplishing anything, because the truth never goes away, does it? There's nothing to accomplish. If anything, there's a subtraction or a correction that's needed. I have to let go of all of the obstacles to the awareness of God's presence, the awareness that God is love, and that I, in the likeness and image, am love as well. Well, she goes on to say, no matter what I say, my actions declare who I am. Self-awareness is both humbling and empowering. Beginning now, I will quit complaining about what I don't have and gratefully focus on all I have. I'll trade negative self-talk for words of self-encouragement and optimism. Well, here again, she's talking about the choice. Self-awareness is a necessary precursor to choosing. I have to know, first of all, what is the nature of my power? Well, the nature of my power may seem rather restricted because I'm human and I'm finite in mind. But the truth is, I can tap into the infinite mind of Christ and God. And then all my choices are infinite as well. I have an unlimited array of possibilities. And with the unlimited array of possibilities, I can trade negative self-talk for words of self-encouragement and optimism. This makes all the difference in the world. You know, it's been said that um, we are as happy as we decide to make ourselves. I think that was Abraham Lincoln said, people are as happy as they decide that they're going to be. Well, a decision such as that indicates that there is a part of our mind that is a decision-making part of our mind, and that we control that decision. There's a light, there's a possibility there that we have our hands, figuratively speaking, on the controls. And the controls that we have our hands on give us infinite power. Now, this doesn't mean I have infinite power over other people, places, or things, but I do have infinite power over myself and my perception of people, places, and things. And you know what? That's as good as having power over the world, because my perception, when I change my mind and I'm in an alignment with God, which is love, then I see everything in that light. I see everything from that perspective. And what that means is I don't need to change the world. I just need to change my mind. And this, of course, comes from A Course in Miracles. Seek not to change your world, but seek to change your mind about the world. And then everything, of course, aligns accordingly. Well, she goes on to say, I'm ready to gently release judgment and guilt in order to see the world with acceptance and love. Surrendering the old, I create room for the truth to make itself known. This is huge because she's talking about releasing judgment, which are negative thoughts, criticism, resentments, grievances. All of these things are the ego holding on to guilt, and then by seeking to project guilt onto somebody else, thinking that I'm relieved of it. Projection only makes for perception. It does not make for a release from sin, guilt, and fear, which are still ideas in my own mind, and they don't leave by virtue of projection. If anything, they get strengthened. So the answer, which would be the miracle in this case, the retraction of the projection, the bringing back of the negative thoughts, is a change in mind. I'm willing to take that grievance and that resentment. I'm willing to take that judgment and say, here, God, I'm placing this on the altar in my mind. I want it to be taken up. Shine the light on it so that the light shines away the darkness. And then my mind is filled with light and love. And similarly, I see others as filled with light and love because I'm seeing the truth. My mind has been cleared. When your mind is cleared and you have that kind of self-discipline to align with God and God's love and that light, then everything that you see on the perceptive plane of existence, which is the nature of earth, is similarly situated in the light. And then we see the truth. Similarly, we don't see the past anymore. We don't fear the future. We're in the present moment, the moment of the be here now. And that is the highest state of self-actualization. That is the state where we are filled with enlightenment. And there is the light. Well, she goes on to say the changes that come with new beginnings are ongoing. Some past situations and relationships are no longer a fit for who I'm becoming. I've become uncomfortable with people I once wanted to be around. The job I prayed for now feels like a mismatch. The universe supports the changes in me. Doors are opening on my behalf. It's time to walk through them. Well, this is interesting because as our minds expand, similarly, the world outside expands concurrently. That is a law, that is given, that as one thinks, so is it done unto him or her. And so the things that I did in the past no longer serve me. It's like a child who's growing up. They put away their childish toys and they realize that they're no longer satisfied with children's toys. They want things that make a difference in the world rather than just for self-pleasure and entertainment. And this is the nature, I think, of self-actualization. Once we know that our needs are always met through the higher power of our Father, Mother, God, then we can go on and move towards the service and the provision to others and the charity and the loving and the golden rule, because we know that the basic needs no longer need to be worried about. We know that those will be provided for us as God's grace. And God's grace is perfect, always providing us with what we need and what will nurture and heal us. We're born in grace, and in grace we live. When we know that, and we then move on from that stepping stone, we're always guided to be among the giants, if you will, the giants of the human divine race. We are a hero. We're not a victim. I think the way they describe it is we're a victor rather than a victim. Doesn't that sound a lot more appealing? Doesn't that sound a lot closer to the truth? I am a victor. I am not a victim of the world that I see. So she says, my purpose is to be the person I'm capable of being. I'm the only one who can be me, and the world would be incomplete without me. With every choice I make, both positive and negative, I grow into my potential. Well, negative choices would be a learning lesson. You realize what doesn't work. You realize that you're out of alignment with your higher power. Whereas positive choices always reinforce and motivate us to go deeper into the God self that is within our minds, because we see that it works for us and for everyone involved. We see that both the past and the future collapse into the present moment. And the present moment is where the healing can take place. It can't take place in the past, and it certainly can't take place in the future. And as a matter of fact, the whole idea of time, past, present, and future, being a linear arrangement, kind of like a flat line, linear, is false. In metaphysics, we know that there are only successive moments of eternal now, the eternal always. This is the truth, and this is the truth that I seek to teach. And it's my privilege and my privilege alone. And when I say it's my privilege alone, nobody else can do it for me. Nobody else can do it for you. Each one of us has to make the decision to knock on the door of heaven, where the door opens and the light comes flooding out. And as we're embraced by the light and by our higher angels, we then recognize that we also are the light. We're made in the name of and in the substance and in the nature of the light. So then we become the light. We become the better angels themselves because we're filled with better angels. The ideas of the angels, the ideas of God, the ideas of Christ and Buddha space, that's all within us. It's within our thoughts. When you start to open up in prayer and meditation and practice and affirmative prayer to all that is within your mind, your right mind, you're going to find that all of the fears and worries and upsets and challenges begin to dissipate or retreat into the background of your mind's eye. And what comes to the forefront, because nature abhors a vacuum, and so there's a space that's opened up when the fears retreat to the background, and then ultimately to the nothingness from whence they came. What you're filled with is the love and the light of Christ, and you go out with a ministry. Every one of us is a teacher of God. Every one of us has its own ministry. And our ministry is to join with other people in love and to demonstrate by example that they too can heal their minds. Healed minds are the minds of Christ and Buddha. And when the healed mind is in full gear and full operation, we are then in our true self. And of course, I love that topic of what is the true self. Well, the true self is the expression of God in Christ. The true self is the expression of love in action and in thought. The true self is the one who cares not for self, but for others, pardons others rather than seek to be pardoned, loves others rather than seek to be loved. This is the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi. All of this is true. And again, it's my privilege and honor to be on these videos and able to share this with you. Well, she concludes her little article, and I'm talking about Reverend Jane Beach, who is a minister, an author, an artist. She says, I am enough, and I matter in the world, just as I am. Every moment counts as I consciously change the flow of my life. Am I worth a new beginning? You bet I am. So are you. I don't need to live up to anyone else's expectations. Instead, I'm becoming my authentic self in my own time and in my own way. Well, of course, in my own time and in my own way, because that's the nature of experience. I have self-awareness. I have self-authenticity. But ultimately, and this is something that I've experienced periodically, but of course not consistently yet. When we become totally enlightened, there is no self anymore. There's just a collective identity of oneness. And that may sound paradoxical, a collective oneness. But, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. While I'm still in the nature of my one self, I do the best I can to treat others and myself as one, because I know that we're all holograms of each other. And a hologram contains everything in the nature and substance of that which it is holographic. And also, God in infinite wisdom has created what I like to call the sonship. The sonship, Sonship, is a apt description of who and what we all are. There is no individual son, ultimately. There's only the sonship. And there is only one God. And that one God is so large, and the tent, using that metaphor, is so large that the whole of the sonship is included underneath that provision of a tent. When the children of Israel were leaving Egypt and out of slavery, which is a metaphor for being closed-minded and fearful, and they were in the desert, manna was provided every day for them and was provided for everybody equally. We've heard the saying that it rains on the just and the unjust equally. These are laws of not mechanistic physics, but laws of quantum physics. And what I mean by that is that it goes way beyond mechanism. goes way beyond being able to be measured and in some way predictable. There's nothing predictable about the quantum physics of freedom in the nature and the likely mind and the greatness of the infinite one. It's totally unpredictable, but in its unpredictability, there is a consistency of love. And love has no boundaries. There's no expression of love that is not maximal. And maximal is always expanding and expanding further and further. So just when you feel that you've experienced the most that you can in terms of connecting with somebody or making amends and forgiving, you recognize that there's a deeper level of love that can be expressed. Not because the nature of love had been in some way limited previously, it's just that our ability to experience it keeps expanding. So there's a reciprocity, if you will. The object of my love experiences the greatness and the expansion. I experience the greatness and the expansion, and God knows in infinite wisdom that all of his children are growing infinitely, exponentially, at all times and in all ways, not linearly, but in a way that defies the time and the space that is limiting. It happens in the ultimate awareness of the eternal now, the eternal always. Successive moments, if you will, but up a ladder of atonement, up a ladder of salvation, not in a straight line, one step after another, and then some steps back. That never really happens because we never go backwards. That is just not the nature of love. Love is always expressing in furtherance of more creativity, more love, more ability to join with one another in celebration, more in an ability to be one's golden rule for another. I'll treat you as I'd have you treat me. I'll love you as I love myself, as I love the Lord. All of this is true. And it's so wonderful when you start living your life this way. The reason I enjoy teaching is because I'm learning. When I learn, I'm able to express it more. I express it more, and then I'm able to teach and learn more. And so it goes. As I said, we're all teachers of God. We're all ministers of God. And if you don't express your ministry, and each of us has one, each of us has a flock that we're to attend and to shepherd. Do you know that the people in your life are your flock? And the people that you don't even know that are in your life, that God has in some way connected you with, you'll touch them and you'll touch their hearts. You do that because God is so great. Jesus said, it's not I, but the Father within that does the work. And if that's the truth, and I believe it with all my heart, that we're channels or messengers, we are not the originators of the work, and we're not the actual facilitators of the work, except in the most basic ways that God would have us be. But the miracleized nature of the work is done through the Holy Spirit, is done through Christ. And we embody that, but we don't begin that. We're not the creator. We are in the nature of the created. We are the pottery. God is the potter. We want to submit. We want to surrender. We want to purify our minds. Do you know that a disciplined mind can accomplish anything? And the reverse of that is true. An undisciplined mind can accomplish very little. And we're always feeling at the effect of a mind that seems to be running and scattering in all different directions. So we want to discipline our minds. And how we do that is by simply taking our marching orders from our higher power, the infinite wisdom of God itself. God is infinite love. And to take your marching orders is exactly what your will is as well. There's no distinction. There's no division between God's will and our own will. We are one with God. We are the one that he has chosen to do the work. Well, let's close out this session with a quote from today's entry, April 22nd, and it's called The Law of Command. Again, this is from the Science of Mind magazine. Catherine Ponder is a writer in New Thought circles, and she's very well known and well respected, particularly on the subject of prosperity and abundance. And she writes, most of us have been human pygmies when we might have been spiritual giants had we dared to command God's good to manifest. And that's what I was talking about in terms of the true self. Once you get beyond the question of whether you will be provided for, God provides for the sparrow. How much more does God provide for us? Once that trust and faith is in place, we then recognize that we can command God's good and manifest in our lives at a level that maybe heretofore we had never manifested. So Ernest Holmes, in his book, The Science of Mind, says Jesus' method and approach during his entire ministry was to give thanks and then command the law of cause and effect, the law of good, the law of karma to work, the law of grace to work. This is all within our tool bag, if you will. And we can take out any tool that we want as long as it was placed there by God first and use it for the betterment of ourselves and for entire mankind. I love that term mankind because that really includes everybody. I used the term sonship earlier. These are all interchangeable. As long as there's a collectivism in your mindset rather than an ego I-ness, and there's no letter I in the word heaven. There is no I in heaven. It is always a we. It's always a provider of the best for everybody. And time is not a factor. So this means that things in the past that we have ideations of past become healed along with the present moment work that we're doing. And things prospectively in the future that we have no idea will even become, in effect, those are getting healed as well in the present moment of now. That's how God works, and that's how we work. We are wired, if you will, to be in the likeness and image of God, who said, I see, first of all, that I've called forward man, and man is good, very good. And what that means, I think, in the nature of the biblical saying, God saw his creation and called it good, is that it was an expression of itself. And God knows its ultimate love within itself. That's it. That's what it is. And so, of course, it would love its creation as a father loves his son. There's no doubt about it in my mind. We are greatly loved. We are in the likeness and image of our Creator. Thank you for this episode. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.